few days afterwards, I was invited to dinner at Mr. Jaggers's house with Herbert Pocket, Startop and Bentley Drummle. Mr. Jaggers lived in a large, gloomy building, not far from his office. We all sat down at a big table. There was plenty for everyone to eat and drink, but Mr. Jaggers kept everything at his side and served us himself. When he saw Drummle, he immediately asked me who he was. "That is Bentley Drummle," I replied. "So, Bentley Drummle is his name, is it?" he said. Mr. Jaggers thought about this information for a moment before saying, "I like the look of him." Mr. Jaggers spent a lot of time looking at Drummle. He talked to Drummle for a long time, and I heard Drummle boasting that he was much stronger than Startop and me. We were both annoyed, and Startop and I found ourselves talking boastfully as well. Our conversation became a competition to show who had the best skills. Mr. Jaggers seemed to enjoy our talk as a form of entertainment. But I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't know why I said some of the things I did, but being among these people seemed to make me behave that way. Just then, a woman of about 40 entered the room. She was tall and thin, with pale eyes and long hair, and she gave Mr. Jaggers an anxious look as she put more food on the table. She seemed to be worried that Mr. Jaggers would say something bad about the food. He introduced her as Molly, his housekeeper. "Now, if you gentlemen want to see some real strength, show them your wrists, Molly," Mr. Jaggers continued. She pulled up her sleeves and showed them to us. One of her wrists had terrible scars on it. It must have been cut badly in the past. "I have never met a man or a woman with stronger hands than Molly," Mr. Jaggers said. "They are remarkable. Don't you just think so?" We all took turns to look at her arms. Then Mr. Jaggers thought that Molly was getting too much attention, so he told her to leave the room again. "At 9:30, gentlemen," said Mr. Jaggers. "We need to finish. Please make good use of your time here." Until that time, Drummle continued to boast about things he had done, which Mr. Jaggers seemed to encourage. However, when Drummle left the house with Startop, Drummle realised that he no longer had an enthusiastic audience for his boasting, and the two started to argue. Before leaving, I told Mr. Jaggers that I did not like Drummle at all. He advised me to keep away from him, and then he said good night. Fortunately, however, Drummle finished his education with Mr. Matthew Pocket soon afterwards, and returned home, to my great relief. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from Biddy. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Pip, I am writing to you at the request of Mr. Joe Gargery to let you know that he is going to be in London and would be very glad to see you. He will arrive at 9 o'clock in the morning and hopes that this will be a good time for you. I am sure that you will be happy to see him because you always had a good heart. Your poor sister is much the same as when you left. We talk about you every day and think about what you are saying and doing. Yours sincerely, Biddy." I wished that I could pay Joe not to come. He was my friend, but I was ashamed of him now. He wanted to visit me at Barnard's Inn, where I still had lodgings with Herbert. It was lucky, I thought, that he was not visiting me at my tutor's home in Hammersmith. I didn't want to introduce him to everyone there. Early one morning, Joe arrived at my lodgings. He would not sit down. He looked very uncomfortable, and he remained standing. He held on to his hat nervously. He seemed anxious not to do or say the wrong thing, but I was annoyed. If only he would not call me sir so often. We ate breakfast with Herbert, who tried to help Joe to feel comfortable. But Joe coughed too much, sat too far away from the table, and dropped food everywhere. It was only when Herbert left for work, and we were alone, that I found out why he had come. "Miss Havisham wishes to see you, sir," Joe said, "and she wants you to know that Estella has come home." I hoped that Joe could not see how I felt. "Pip, my dear friend," he said affectionately, "I wish you well." Then he left. A few minutes later, I was sorry that I had been so unfriendly to Joe. I hurried outside, hoping to call him back, but it was too late. I could not see him anywhere. I decided to go home the following day. Although I thought of staying with Joe, I told myself that a room would not be ready for me at the blacksmith's. I told myself that it would be better for Joe if I stayed at a hotel instead, so I found one near Miss Havisham's house. As I was waiting to leave London on the coach, I saw 2 convicts standing nearby. They wore leg irons and handcuffs. Their guard had a gun. I recognised one of the convicts immediately. It was the man who had given me a shiny new coin at the village inn a long time ago. I hoped that he would not recognise me. After all, I was older now and dressed like a gentleman. When the coach arrived, the 2 convicts and their guard climbed up, sitting just behind me. I tried not to look at them, but I could not avoid their conversation. "When I first went to prison," I heard the first convict saying, "I was only inside for a few months. When I was told that I could leave, another convict, Magwitch, asked me to help him. He wanted me to find a boy who had helped him, years before, when he had escaped and was hiding on the marshes. Magwitch didn't know me then, but he gave me a shiny new coin to give to that boy, if I ever found him, and I did. So the convict I gave the food and file to, all those years ago, is called Magwitch," I thought. "Huh," said the second convict. "Magwitch trusted you then, did he?" "Yes, he did," the first convict replied, "but he didn't know me very well." "Magwitch got a life sentence for that escape, you know," the guard said. Memories came back to haunt me, and I was scared. I got off the coach as soon as I could and walked the rest of the way. It was late when I arrived at the hotel. I was feeling very tired, but I didn't sleep very well that night.